Well, hello, everyone. My name is Brooke Rose, and I am a current Miller Center Fellow for the year of 2021. And I am super excited to talk about my experience as a fellow with the Sisters Blended Value Project. I am an environmental studies and sociology double major with a minor in Spanish. And I would love to introduce my research partner, Molly Flood.
Yes, thank you, Brooke. My name is Molly, and I am Brooke Rose's partner in the Sisters Blended Value Project. I am a religious studies and sociology double major, and we are joined here today with the alumni of the Sisters Blended Value Project, Lauren Serfas, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, my name is Lauren. So I'm a 2019 Global Social Benefit Fellow and was the first cohort that worked with the Sisters Blended Value Project. So I was able to actually be on the ground in Kenya with the Assumption Sisters that both Molly and Brooke worked with. And I graduated in 2020 with a degree in bioengineering. And then later that August entered religious life. So I'm now in formation to be a religious sister. So it's been really interesting and helpful to bridge both of these worlds of social entrepreneurship and religious life.
So we want to introduce the Assumption Sisters of Eldoret, which is one of the 3 congregations that Brooke and I worked with remotely via Zoom. And this photo is a picture of the postulants, which is the first stage in religious life formation. And the woman in the middle is Holly Laveau, who is a board member of the Miller Center and also a benefactor of the Sisters Blended Value Project. And this summer, she actually was able to travel to Kenya and meet the sisters in Eldoret and was able to take all these wonderful photos. So all the photos we'll be showing were taken by Holly. And we actually learned a lot from Holly and more about the sisters' lives. And the reason why we're showing the photo of the postulants is because this summer we mostly worked with the postulants and the novices. Our deliverable involves a curriculum for them and for future generations of postulants and novices. And it is aiming to educate them in financial reasoning and social entrepreneurship as a way to provide a sense of agency and ownership over their own vocation. And like you said, bridging the religious life vocation with social entrepreneurship. So this is just a few of the postulants we worked with, and I'll go on to the next slide.
Yes, and then this is a photo of the novices, which is the next step in religious formation, as well as some of the older and more experienced sisters that we were able to work with. Sister Agatha is the one on the far left, Sister Christine is the one on the far right, and then Sister Monica is the one wearing a mask in the middle. And these were the sisters that were most heavily involved in starting up their original social enterprise, which is a poultry farm that uses eggs, chicks, and chicken meat to kind of provide for both their congregation and their broader community. And Lauren, we obviously were not able to travel to Kenya this past summer, but we had a wonderful experience getting to just have a lot of joyful conversations with these sisters, Sister Christine, Sister Agatha, and Sister Monica over Zoom. But I was wondering, what were your experiences working with them on the ground, and how would you kind of describe each of them, and how would you describe the relationships between them and the postulants and novices?
Yeah, thank you. It's an excellent question, and a question that being on the ground really sheds a lot of insight into. For me, I had the opportunity to interview various stages of sisters. So sisters in formation, some of the older sisters. And one thing that I recognized was this deep desire for the younger sisters to dream, right? They had ideas, and I said, well, have you shared them? And the idea was like, well, I can't, right? I'm only a sister in formation, or I'm only a sister who just took vows. And so I recognize that they have deep-seated dreams and deep-seated desires and hopes for themselves and for their congregation. And sometimes I feel that space isn't always allowed, right? And so I recognize religious life in general, as I'm living right now, is there's a vow of obedience. There's an aspect of superiority. And I think within the congregations, particularly in Africa, that's very visible, right? So you see the general superior, those that are in charge of all the sisters, and even some of the vowed sisters having a lot more superiority and therefore privilege and responsibility than some of the younger sisters. And so for me, there was this sense of, well, how do we also give these space for these younger sisters to dream, to implement? And I think this is what your deliverable does a lot, which I'm super excited for. But for me, it was really the contrast in both the older sisters and the newer sisters, but also recognizing the energy, the hopes, and the desires within the younger sisters to truly make this future that will be their own.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that, Molly and I, we held a lot of workshops with these sisters information over the summer, just to kind of like get to know them as people, getting to know, what, their desire for their vocation, their desire to become a religious sister, and combining that with the things they wanted to learn about business and financial literacy. And we definitely resonate with the discovery that, these are women with hopes and dreams, and they see being a religious sister as a way to achieve them.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, so going on to the next slide. This is a photo Holly took while she was in Kenya of a women's self-help group that happens at the congregation. Within these circles of women, there are a variety of things that they benefit from, and they share skills and knowledge around running an enterprise, maybe starting an enterprise, but also just issues that women face in Kenya, and a space that offers them support and a commonality of experiences and an overall community to share and be supported from. And the sisters facilitate these. And as you can see, there's many local women attending these. And many of these women are also outgrowers, meaning that they have their own poultry farms in their homes or right outside their homes. And the sisters help them to learn how to run their own poultry farm and help them sell their eggs and chicken meat so they can start to gain a profit from their poultry farm. So on to the next slide. This is a picture of some photos from their farm. So we see the chicken farm in the middle, pigs, incubator. And since we weren't there, we would love, Lauren, if you have any, knowledge or stories that you remember of being on the ground, working on the farm, and maybe your experience there.
Yeah. So this picture on the bottom left is where it all started. So that's the outdoor part. And then there's an indoor part as well. But to be honest, we started pretty small, not knowing any idea how all of this was going to fit together. I remember the day before the chicks were supposed to arrive, we're thinking, well, how do we get all the food that they need? And how do we have the heating and the light that we need? And so it's pretty incredible to see all of this coming together. So along with on the farm, they had chickens, right? They also had cows, pigs, rabbits, almost any animal that you can think of. And so it really is an enterprise in terms of a lot of different animals. And really this point on the chickens, both for the impact and that it can have, and then the social communities with the women, but also recognizing that this is a feasible and financial model for the sisters. On the right is an incubator. And so when I was there, there's no incubator, which is really cool. It was a new development. I believe last year, maybe they were able to have the funds in order to buy that. But really now this allows them to be completely independent. Right. Initially, when I was there, they were relying a lot on another social enterprise, Entrepreneurial, in which they adapted this model to religious congregations. But here, recognizing they are now sustainable to be able to truly have the greatest impact, I believe, within their communities and within the women's group that Molly and Brooke talked about. So really, it's very life-giving to see this continue to grow. When I started, there were 200 chicks. Now there's over, I believe, 3,000 or 4,000. Right. And to see that in to be honest, 2 years is pretty incredible.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to hear kind of the process and how much it's grown since then. So yeah, thank you so much. Brooke, if you want to share a little bit about this photo.
Yeah, so this is a photo of me and Molly at our Action Research with a Mission poster presentation, where it was kind of like the culmination of our entire project. Where we were able to invite the campus community, our friends, prospective fellows, as well as some board members from the Miller Center. And we were just able to kind of present all the things that we had learned, our deliverables, and just our experiences working with the sisters. But this was kind of like, as we approach the end of our duration as a current fellow, where Molly and I are very much in the headspace of vocational discernment and kind of trying to figure out how, our experiences as a fellow impact, where we're going from here. So Lauren, if you want to share a little bit about, now that you're, a few years out of your fellowship experience, how was your experience, working with the Sisters of Lambda Value Project and Entrepreneur and with the sisters in general impacted your vocational discernment?
Yeah, absolutely. At the beginning, before we head to the field, we have a lot of preparation in terms of research documents that we're going to do there. And then there's also a part on what are our hopes. And for me, to be honest, I said, one of my hopes is to discern this vocation. One of my hopes is to discern this possibility of being a social entrepreneur. And one of them was, where do they intersect, right? And for me, that was a really big point and a really important part of my discernment. Yes, I'm a bioengineer, but my heart is also in love with this idea of social entrepreneurship and creating sustainable change within communities, particularly disadvantaged communities. And so for me, being in the field, being able to live the life of a sister in many ways, being able to critically think and dream as a social entrepreneur in many ways, allowed me to recognize that while this intersection was very uncommon, it wasn't impossible. And I remember there sitting in a chapel in Kenya, feeling like, oh shoot, I gotta take this discernment more seriously. And to be honest, it's scary. Like, who's in religious life these days, especially when you're an engineer? If I was studying theology and philosophy, okay, that translates. But as an engineer, where does that fit? And what I realized was really these aspects of engineering, these aspects of critical thinking, these aspects of dreaming, all of these skills that I particularly developed also within the fellowship. Right? It's not that, okay, bye to all these other things. It was more great. This now becomes a fuller part of me as I continue into this vocation. And so I think for me, it was this recognition of, sometimes I have the image of religious life just as sisters teaching in schools, hitting kids with rulers. And I recognize it's not limited to that, right? There's change in religious life now. There's growing understanding and knowledge of what can religious life be. And like those young women in Kenya who have dreams and hopes for their future, like I do as well, not only for myself and my congregation, but also for the future of women's religious life. And I was able to catch a glimpse of that within this fellowship, really working at the intersection of things that, to be honest, a few years ago, I would have never thought would have been possible. So that's definitely helped me affirm my vocation as a religious sister and really take the steps in order to take this, to be honest, pretty risky or uncommon path of this formation journey. And with that, right, also kind of how has this time as a fellow, this time in your research, this time helped inform kind of where you move forward? How has particularly working with these women and learning about what women's economic empowerment is, how has that influenced your own desire to also empower other people and including yourself in this world?
Yeah, so I think one thing Molly and I were a little bit hesitant about going into the project, which was mainly focused on, financial literacy and social entrepreneurship. Neither Molly and I are business majors. We're both, social science. It wasn't really something we had a lot of experience with going into the fellowship. So when we were having, these workshops with the Sisters Information over the summer, we were learning it pretty much alongside with them. We would create the presentation a few days beforehand, and then we would literally teach what we had just learned to them. And we were able to have, fruitful discussions with them. And I think throughout this fellowship and being able to turn in these deliverables that are focused on financial literacy, and it really has helped empower me. I feel like going into this, I was like, I don't really resonate with like the idea of business. It wasn't really something I really ever felt a passion for. I am personally religious. I'm not Catholic, but I'm a strong Protestant, and working with these sisters and just seeing how they were able to align their charism, which is kind of like their congregation's mission and calling to help serve their communities and their ministries, and align it with social entrepreneurship, was a way to show me that business doesn't necessarily have to be this bad thing or it's just for gaining profit and that's it. But being able to work with these sisters, hear their dreams, and seeing how social entrepreneurship is empowering them to have a better life, empowering them with their identity as a woman and their identity as a sister in religious life, was a new perspective that I wasn't really expecting to see over the summer. And it's definitely helped me wrap my mind around what role can business and social entrepreneurship have in my life and in the lives of other women, not just abroad, but also in the States.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, you said that so well, Brooke. I think I just echo everything that you've said. Thank you. Going on to the next slide. So we have a video here of the sisters and Holly and her family singing and dancing a song that they typically do when they have visitors. So we thought it would be fun to play. It brought us a lot of joy to watch. And then we will close our discussion. Awesome. Well, with that, there's so much joy and happiness in that video. And I think that is something that Brooke and I always felt leaving our Zoom calls with all of them. I know we probably would have felt that all the time by being with them, but I know we feel really thankful for those times we spent with them on Zoom. Lauren, do you have any final questions for us? And thank you so much for being here with us too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a joy and a pleasure to enter back into the space that meant so much for me. My last question is where do you see your deliverables, where do you see this impacting the congregation? What are your hopes kind of short term for these deliverables and also long term?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say Brooke and I are really excited for this deliverable to get out. At first, I think we were a little nervous about the fact that it was going to have such a broad reach among all these different congregations. And Brooke and I felt like, oh, we're not business students. How are we going to be able to educate them on these things? But like Brooke mentioned, throughout this process, it provided us such an opportunity to feel confident in our abilities and claim our own agency over learning these topics. And so I think our long-term hope is that this curriculum will provide sisters in training a space to dream, like you said, Lauren, a space for them to think about different ways they can live out their vocation. That could be through social entrepreneurship, or it could be being a doctor or a teacher, but giving them a space to really explore different avenues of their life and find empowerment in those. And hopefully that will trickle down into the communities that they continually impact, and especially the women that they host in their women's groups. So in terms of the long-term effects, we hope that this curriculum won't just be restricted to religious life, and it will be something that they continue to share because their positionality within these communities is so strong. They have such great relationships and share all of their knowledge with the community around them. So we're hoping that that is what happens with this curriculum as well. And yeah.
Phenomenal. As a sister in religious life, right? I was telling them earlier, but this changes the way that religious life and formation is done, right? And so this creates a space for conversation. It creates a space for dialogue, right? We're called now to be a church of dialogue. And so as a sister in formation myself, I'm like, can we put that in our curriculum as well? So it brings me great joy of what they've been able to accomplish, particularly over Zoom. And I have great hopes for what this will be able to reach and who it will be able to reach. So excellent work, both Molly and Brooke, and thanks for allowing me to be part of this conversation. It's been such a joy and a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you all for sharing all of your thoughts. I know that I found this time working with the sisters and my time as a fellow very, very valuable. So just thank you all for having this discussion and dialogue.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren, for joining us. You have such great thoughts, and we're really, really appreciative.
Thank you for having me.